The college football bowl season began Saturday for the Mountain West Conference, and so far the conference is 1-1. We have 4 more Mountain West Conference games remaining, including Wyoming and future first-round pick Josh Allen facing Central Michigan in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl on Friday. We'll break down the remaining Mountain West Conference bowl games as we go one-on-one with Robert Gagliardi, senior sports editor and beat writer for Wyoming football, and Mountain West Conference sports in Laramie and Cheyenne, Wyoming on the OFN meeting room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's December 21st, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN meeting room as we talk Wyoming football and Mountain West Conference football with Robert Gagliardi. Robert, thanks for coming back and joining us to talk some college football bowl action after talking to you a little over a month ago.
Oh, great. I'm happy to be back. I appreciate you having me.
All right, Robert. So this is, fun time. It could be a fun time. Sometimes, like last night for SMU, it's not so much of a fun time, losing your head coach. And obviously that didn't work out for SMU in the bowl game. So you never know what you're going to get in these games. Sometimes you can guess, and you kind of get a feeling that with Josh Allen saying he's going to play, and it could very well be his last game. Central Michigan hasn't won a bowl game in a couple of years with their head coach. So you get the feeling that the motivation is there for both teams. We could see a good game in that one, and this could be Josh Allen's last game.
Yeah, I think, for all intents and purposes, although Josh hasn't come out and said this will be his last game, Coach Craig Bowl has kind of not said it directly, but alluded to it. And I think people have a general sense that it probably is his last game. And I think the team got a boost knowing that Josh Allen is going to play in this bowl game. He hadn't played since since the November 11th game at Air Force with a sprained right shoulder, missed the last 2 regular season games, and the team struggled mightily without him. And now that he's back, but he's been practicing and making progress. And I still, even though I think the players got the sense that he probably would play because he's been practicing and taking a lot of reps, I think when they announced it yesterday, I think it gave him a big lift, and I even think it lifted Central Michigan. They even said we want to face Wyoming's best, and I think they're motivated for that. So I don't know if that means it'll be the cleanest game or the best game of the bowl season, but I do think you do have 2 motivated teams that want to be here, want to be in this bowl game. So, and as you mentioned, with SMU or some of these other teams in these bowl games, you don't always see that. So I don't think that will be a factor in this game on Friday.
Yeah, Central Michigan has played their best football this season, 5-0 in their last 5 games, and Shane Morris is a big reason for that. 14 touchdowns to 2 interceptions over those last 5. Having Corey Willis out there is no coincidence that means that they're going to have a lot more of a potent offense. He's had 8 touchdowns over those last 5 games, and Mark Chapman is explosive, and tight end Ty Conklin. And then on the flip side, you've got a Wyoming team with Josh Allen that before the injury to Allen, they started playing their best football. They were 6-1 in Josh Allen's last 7 starts, and things were starting to go pretty well for them. There was excitement going on once again at Wyoming after a couple of bad losses to start the season, then the Allen injury, and then 2 losses. The offense couldn't get going. But you throw that away because Allen coming back, and you kind of got to feel, like you said, the excitement. Okay, now let's go back to being like we were at 6-1 against a 5-0 team coming in, and now you've got a good game.
Yeah, I think it has the makings of a good game, and it has the makings of a defensive battle when you look at it, because you look at Central Michigan, who leads all of FBS football with 31 turnovers forced. And then right behind him, tied for second, is Wyoming with 30.
Wow.
So, it is kind of cliche, the team that wins the turnover battle wins the game. But I think it really hits home with this game even more just based on what these teams have done on defense. They both run 4-3 schemes. They both have very good defensive fronts, high caliber defensive ends that can rush the passer, good guys in the secondary that make plays and force turnovers. So, a lot's made of Josh Allen, certainly, and obviously the weapons that Central Michigan has, and they've got plenty of them. But really, you almost look at it on paper and you think like this could be a, 17-14 type game just based on what the defenses have done, especially turning people over. Now that you say that, I probably just broke the jinx and we're going to have a 52-51 game or something. But
you never know.
But you do look at it you look at paper, this could be a knockdown, drag out, just, old school knock them in the dirt football game with the way the defense play.
And Wyoming goes to play at Boise. This is the blue turf. They haven't had a lot of success on the blue turf in recent years, but that's playing Boise. So I'm glad. I'm pretty sure they're happy not to see Boise on the other sideline. Now, of course, they played Boise. That was the game that they lost with Josh Allen at quarterback during that 6-1 run. It was a pretty close game, but Boise won the game by 10. The last time, at least, do you think that's an advantage at all for Wyoming, being a West Coast game, an environment that they've played before? It's at a stadium from their own conference. Is that at all you think benefit them?
Well, I don't think it can hurt them. You're right. They played in this stadium before, albeit they're 0-5 in this stadium. So they're certainly hoping for some better luck that way. But they know the field, they know the stadium, they know. I don't think that can hurt them. And what also I think helps them, and it'll be a wash, but a lot is made of the blue turf, and I get it, but it's also one of the worst playing surfaces in the country. I mean, it's uneven. I mean, even if you just go out and walk on it, it's not a very good playing surface. And a lot of Wyoming players have told me that they think it's awful, and even some have said it's unsafe. But that's not what they're focused on. But they know that, and Central Michigan's never been out to this game, so I don't know if that'll get in their head or not. Once games start, none of that stuff should matter. You should just be worried about what's going on. But I do think just having somewhat of a familiarity will help Wyoming. But their focus better be on Central Michigan, not on the familiarity of the stadium, or it will be a long game for the Cowboys.
Now, what do you think? What is your best guess as far as what you think about Wyoming's shot in this game? Look, if Josh Allen wasn't playing, it would be all Central Michigan in my mind because, again, they're a hot team. They've beaten some good teams during that streak. They're hungry for a bowl win, and Wyoming's offense just did nothing without Josh Allen. And so I would have thought that this game would have just been pretty easy to call. But with Josh Allen in there, that's what we don't know. We don't know. He's the best player on the field, so that can change a lot of things. So what do you think?
I do think I think there'll be a lot of defense, and I think, as Josh Allen's last game, maybe it's kind of a storybook type ending where he leads them on a scoring drive late in the game, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal, and Wyoming finds a way to hang in there and win this game. So I'm going like 24-21 type. Okay. And Josh Allen kind of rides off into the sunset, so to speak, with his Wyoming career with the win, and gets Wyoming snaps a 2-game losing streak for the Cowboys.
Now, what are you now in the past or just right now? What you have set up between now and the draft? Do you plan on doing anything considering Josh Allen has got the potential if he declares for the draft and he goes through the whole process and ends up, of course, at the draft and could be a top 5 pick? That's a possibility. Will you do anything yourself as far as going to any of the events, any of the All-Star games that he might be able to attend, or any of the tryouts or the draft itself?
Probably not, just because budgets at our small newspapers probably won't allow that to happen. I'll also cover basketball, so I'll be on the road. I'll be covering conference play in basketball, so we'll certainly be tracking it and trying to give updates. But as far as going to the All-Star games or going out to the draft in April, I'll admit I've certainly spun it by my bosses, but let's just say the response has been about what the temperatures are like here in Boise and about the low to mid 30s.
Yeah, my partner's from the newspaper industry as well, so I know how hard it could be to convince your bosses with the paper to spend some money for something like that. But I was just bringing it up. I knew that wasn't going to be – I knew the chances were low, but I figured, it's got to be awfully tempting for you to have covered Josh Allen the last couple of years and to maybe see him as a top pick of the draft and want to be there and everything like that. I know how it'll feel for you. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And if Josh Allen, win or lose, declares for the NFL draft, and we'll have a whole process to go after that. What do you think about what you've seen so far from the Mountain West Conference in the first couple of games? Now, the Boise-Oregon game, I mean, it's sort of like what you think a little bit of what we saw last night in a way, where you get the coach change, and if it wasn't for some freaky defensive touchdowns by Oregon, that game could have been 49-0. So it's just, I don't know what to even think about that game with Boise. But then in the Colorado State-Wyoming game, you know what? It just seemed like a very disappointing end of the season, second half of the season for the Rams after the start they got off to have Michael Gallup, who could be and maybe will be the top wide receiver in the draft. And Mike Bobo now has had a less than stellar bowl track record. So very disappointing second half of the season for Colorado State, but on the flip side, a very good second half for Boise.
Very good second half for Boise, and I know Oregon did have the coaching change, but they went with Cristobal from within. It's not like they brought someone else from an outsider in. So I didn't think that transition was going to be that big a deal for them. But whether it was that or, and I've seen this a lot in the Vegas Bowl from the Pac-12 teams where, look, you're not getting the Pac-12's runner-up or the third place team. You're basically getting the fourth, fifth, sometimes sixth selection there. And, but I thought, Oregon was healthy. Herbert was back at quarterback. And I remember when he played in Laramie early in the season, he was awesome, and then
he's a good quarterback.
I thought they would look good against Boise. And I thought Boise had a chance, but I thought Oregon would play well against Boise. But Boise, you're right, just took it to them. And if it wasn't for some defensive, some pick sixes, you're right, it's 49. I mean, Boise scores 50 on them easy.
Yeah.
So I was impressed with Boise and how they prepared and how just workmanlike they were. And after a rough kind of early stretch, they figured some things out and played some great football. So it was great to see the league champion play that well in that game for them. And then you're right with Colorado State. I mean, they're, the mantra down there is they're in it to win it. I mean, they built the new stadium, as far as coaching salaries and coaching, pools go, they're right up there. If not, they lead the league in, what they pay coaches and this and that. They're this and that. They think they should be in the Big 12, which is laughable in my opinion. But, when it comes, they struggled at the end of the season, and their struggles in the bowl game was kind of a microcosm of how they struggled at the end. They have all this talent and they have this great coach and they're doing all this, but yet the quarterback wasn't on. Michael Gallup couldn't do it by himself, and the defense, looked like they'd never seen, a deep throw before. They look lost. And, I still think they're a very good program. Don't get me wrong. And they obviously Colorado State feels confident in Mike Bobo because they just locked him up even with a contract extension, which almost made it impossible for them to fire him. So they're all in with Mike Bobo, but they still got some hurdles to get over as far as finishing seasons and, finishing bowl games and things like that. But, obviously the higher ups, like the trajectory of the program, but from a distance, there has to be some concerns there.
Yes.
Because for as good as and glitzy as they think they are, they got a little ways to go, I think.
Yeah, and they lost 5 of their top 6 players, really, if you look at it. I mean, not only did they lose Gallup, they lose Dawkins, they lose the quarterback, they lose the center, they lose a couple of their top defensive players. So that's a lot of key guys gone, especially Gallup and their quarterback. I mean, number one quarterback, receiver, and running back is tough to replace and send your pivot, but especially Gallup. The more I see Gallup play, the more I'm like, you know what? This kid could be top 10 pick. He's really good.
Right. And, I understand, and I don't, I've been told that this NFL draft, as far as receivers goes, isn't the deepest or anything like that. But Michael Gallup is a very good receiver, and he is going to be I think going to be a very good pro. Now they've turned out some good receivers, and they think I think his last name's Johnson might be the next great receiver there. Remains to be seen, but he was a special player, and it's I don't know if there's anyone in the Mountain West where when you lose those types of caliber of players where you just keep reloading every year. I guess if there's anyone like it, I guess it's kind of Boise, but even they still, you can see step downs a little bit when they lose top line guys like that. I think there's some good players in Colorado State's program, don't get me wrong, but to replace all of that next year, especially at the quarterback and even at the receiver, not to say they're not going to, they're 4 wins or anything like that, but if their program's really come along like they think it has, then they're going to be back competing for the division championship. But that's a lot of production to replace in 1 year.
All right. Now there's 3 more bowl games to go for the Mountain West. You have the Armed Forces Bowl, which is going to be on the 23rd. That's in Fort Worth. You have Army and San Diego State. And to me, this is all going to be about Rashad Penny. And this is why I like San Diego State in this game. Army's a nice story. I get that. I picked them to beat Navy. I like them. It was a dramatic win and all that, but they are stepping up in competition here. And this is a San Diego State team that has beaten Stanford and Arizona State this year. They have Penny, who has, if you take a look at what Army, the team that probably closest represents San Diego State would have been the Ohio State game, and Dobbins rushed for 172 on just 13 carries. So I expect Penny to have a monster game, and I just think it's going to be too much for Army.
I think it could be, and it could also be the fastest bowl game we ever watched, because San Diego State's going to want to run it. They're not going to run the option, but they're going to want to run the football. This game may take an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, but no, not just with Penny being able to run the ball, but also him in special teams, because he returns kicks and he returns punts and stuff, and he's returned them for touchdowns during the season. So, if I'm Army, I might even think about kicking it out of bounds, and even if you give it to him at the 35 or 40, just keep it out of his hands. But and also, obviously with I like Army's story too, and that Army-Navy game was one of the funnest games to watch this year, I think, that I was able to watch. But, that option style of offense, San Diego State sees that against Air Force. So I'm not saying they have it down to defending it down to a science, but it's not completely new to him. And Rocky Long's an old defensive coach and still calls the defensive plays. He'll have them ready. I'm not saying they completely shut him down, but I just like San Diego State's overall skill, and I just like and then I like how Rocky Long calls a defensive game plan. I just think San Diego State has too much firepower for Army. I certainly think it could be a good game and a close game. I just think San Diego State has too much skill and firepower to lose it, though.
Yeah, and Rocky Long knows how to. I mean, he's gone up against Air Force an awful lot. So he knows how to play that type of a running game, and he knows how to defend it well.
He does, and I think he's just one of those no nonsense coaches. We talked earlier about what are teams' attitudes at these bowl games? Do they want to be there? Do they care? Or do they just care about getting their gifts and going home for Christmas or whatever? Rocky Long's a coach where I don't know. I'm not guaranteeing a win necessarily, but if San Diego State loses, it's not going to be because Rocky Long didn't get his team ready to play. It's going to be because Army is going to play it. Is going to outplay them, or play a better game.
Sure.
San Diego State will be ready to play that game and be prepared. What Army does is another thing, but you don't have to worry about are they going to be is the want-to going to be there with San Diego State? That's something you're not going to have to worry about with Rocky Long as the coach.
All right, and then the other two games, Fresno, big story for Fresno this year. 1 win last year. Tedford comes to town, 8-2 in their last 10. They were a couple of plays away from winning the Mountain West Conference Championship game in Boise. That was a game where they outplayed Boise, but couldn't get it done, couldn't close the deal. So how do you think that they're going to feel about this game? You think you look back at more of, hey, we won 1 game, we're going to a bowl, this is awesome, or will there be a letdown for not winning the Mountain West Conference Championship game when they take on Houston in the Hawaii Bowl?
That's a really good question. I wish I was there to kind of get a gauge of that, but I think they got to be disappointed that they lost that championship game. I mean, and you're right. I think they outplayed Boise in a lot of respects, but Boise made the plays when it mattered. So
yep.
I'm sure there's a letdown, but if there's I'm sure it stung, and maybe it still does sting, but going to Hawaii isn't a bad way to get rid of the sting. Granted, there's a lot of distractions there, but you're going to a nice climate. You're playing a very good opponent, and you can cap off what's been arguably one of the best turnarounds in college football this season, by the Bulldogs. So, just kind of knowing how Jeff Tedford does things, that I would think he would have them ready to go. And that championship game loss is in the rearview mirror. But when you're dealing with young men, 18 to 22-year-olds, sometimes you never know. I'll say this: they had better be basically back on edge like they were when they beat Boise in the regular season finale, or even how they played in the championship game, because Houston will come in there with a lot of skill, a lot of speed, and a guy in Ed Oliver at defensive line who's maybe the best defensive lineman that's in college football right now. So they better be on edge, because if they're not, and they're more worried about still kind of feeling sorry for themselves after losing the championship game, or were more concerned about being on the beach, it could be Houston could really hand it to them. But if they're on edge like they basically have been most of all season, I really do like Fresno State's chances.
All right, and now I do see that Bonner, of course, was injured. He had his arm in a sling during the second half of the Navy game. It's the last time we saw Bonner play, so we don't have any idea right now if he's going to be available for that game on Christmas Eve. That would be a big loss for Houston if Bonner didn't play. So they need to keep out because they don't have any superstar quarterbacks at Houston this year. So they're going to need all the skill position players that they can get. And that's something to keep an eye on. Still have a few days to go before we find out anything about Bonner. And then the final game is the Utah State game. Great story. And that one is New Mexico State, first bowl game since 1960. So that should be a lot of fun for fans to tune in. That's again, that's the one thing that you do like about the bowl games. Because New Mexico State wouldn't be in a bowl game if there weren't like 100 of them. So that's okay. We'll I guess that's one thing that we'll be okay with as far as having New Mexico State giving it a chance to win a bowl game for the first time in about 50, 60 years. Interestingly enough, the last time New Mexico State played in a bowl game in 1960, they played Utah State. So I kind of find that very ironic. In the Arizona Bowl. What do you think about Utah State, who actually seemed to play a little bit better in the second half of the season?
Yeah, and honestly, I think Matt Wells saved his job by the way his team played in the second half of the season. I think he was on the hot seat at the start of the season, and I know things didn't get off to a great start for the Aggies, but I think they've kind of settled in on a freshman quarterback who seems to be getting better. They still have a senior there to help them, but I think they've settled on him, and they just played good football. I think Matt Wells saved his job by the way his team played, and I really like Utah State's makeup. I think they're tough guys. They're maybe a year or two away from kind of getting back to maybe where they were at a couple years ago in this league. But I just like their makeup, and I like the young quarterback, and they got good weapons around them. They got a couple decent backs. They got a good tight end to go to. They've got some guys on defense that, they're kind of no-name guys, but they just seem to make enough plays. They're not going to stone you, but they just play hard, and I like it. But they're really going to have to take it up a level because, as you mentioned with New Mexico State, arguably maybe the best story of this whole bowl season, just getting to a bowl, the want-to's there.
Yep.
The emotions there, and not saying that Utah State isn't excited to be to a bowl game because they've had some tough times, but they're going to almost have to take it up even a level even higher because just that emotion and that momentum and that excitement is going to just be huge for New Mexico State. So Utah State better almost match it in a lot of cases, because if not, that can just snowball on them, and good or bad. It could also snowball on New Mexico State. They're so amped to be there. They're so caught up in it. Maybe they lose focus once they get on the field, and it goes in the opposite direction. But more often than not, we've seen in these bowl games, the team that really wants to be there and is so excited, that can just be such a big advantage. So Utah State's going to have to match, especially early. Once the game kind of gets going, maybe some of that kind of goes away. But especially early on, if Utah State can match that, I like its chances.
All right. Now, as far as next year, is it looking like the clear preseason favorite's going to be Boise again? Because they bring back some key guys next season, depending on whether or not some juniors leave. But, Rippon will be a senior, Madison will be a junior, and my favorite, Leighton Vander Esch, is going to be a senior. So you got to love him. He's a throwback. So they got some really key guys coming back. They got hot at the end of the season because Fresno loses their quarterback. Colorado State, we talked about the losses there. Josh Allen possibly leaves. So Boise, the clear favorite next year?
I think they're going to be the favorite, but today it was announced that Vander Esch is turning pro.
Really?
Wow. They will lose him.
Okay.
But they lose some guys. Cedric Wilson, the receiver, was very good. But they still have some good pieces coming back, and you got to think they'll always have. They've done a good job of developing guys. So I think on paper, though, you go with a Boise State, especially on in the mountain side of the division. And then, CSU will be talked about just because of, Mike Bobo there
Sure.
and recruiting all these 3-star guys from the South. So there's that. Air Force will return a lot. I think New Mexico is kind of maybe in a downward spin, but I think Utah State will be up there. And then, when Wyoming loses a guy like Josh Allen, you're thinking, oh my gosh, but really, other than a couple other guys, they return just about everybody on both sides of the ball, aside from the quarterback. So, I'm not saying, pencil the Cowboys in to be the champions, but if they can, with a strong defense, I think 8 or 9 of those guys are supposed to come back, and the entire offensive line and all the skill guys coming back. I mean, Wyoming will return a lot of football players next year, so they'll be in the hunt. And then, you look on the other side, and I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought Fresno's quarterback was just a junior this year, so I thought he came back, but maybe he doesn't.
Oh, the transfer?
But
yeah, he's possibly a junior. Okay.
He's a junior, but maybe he doesn't. But but what Jeff Tedford's done is just been amazing. So I think you got to look at them in San Diego State as teams to look at. UNLV looks like, at times they look like they're making a run to get up there, but then they go down and up and down. And Hawaii can show some things. I think San Jose still has a long way to go to getting back to respectability, but Boise will be up in there. I think Fresno and San Diego will, and then after that, it's really kind of a crapshoot of how who can step in certain spots for other teams and kind of take the reins, so to speak.
Yeah, I think UNLV has the right coach there in Sanchez. So I think they just got to give him some time to recruit and build something there. But yeah, I kind of like what they've got. They're getting close, and then you mentioned with McMarion considering he was a transfer, but he does have one more year left, so that's huge. You got Keyshawn Johnson coming back. So we might have, it's very possible we're going to see Fresno State and Boise State in the championship game again next year.
It certainly wouldn't, I think on paper that's the clear-cut probably favorites, but it wouldn't surprise me. But it wouldn't surprise me some other teams snuck in there too. But I do like what Boise and Fresno return on paper, and I know San Diego State loses a guy like Penny, but you know what? When they lost DJ Pumphrey last year, they didn't lose anything. I don't know who the next great running back at San Diego State's going to be, but I think Rocky Long knows what he's doing there. So I wouldn't expect the Aztecs to fall too far down.
All right, Robert, I appreciate your time again. Enjoy the bowl games, and we look forward to talking to you once again. Not sure when that's going to be, but worst case scenario, we look forward to talking to you again at some point during the summer, maybe even after spring practices and such, and get an early feel for what's going on now that the first part of recruiting is over, the major part of recruiting. So we look forward to keeping in touch with you, though, definitely well before the 2018 season begins.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. All right, that's Robert Gagliardi. And again, you can catch Robert Gagliardi's work in the Laramie and Cheyenne papers. And if you're not living in Wyoming, in Laramie and Cheyenne, you can just, of course, go online. Don't we all? So that'll wrap it up for our meeting room coverage of the Mountain West Conference. Earlier today, we had what did we do earlier today? Boy, these meeting room shows go by so fast. What did we have? Oh, we had the AAC earlier today. So that's available on demand right now, actually. So that's already available on demand. The AAC, we did the Conference USA, we did the Sun Belt. Boy, we've done them all, but we've got a lot more coverage, of course. Tomorrow, we'll be talking NFL. We're also going to do a college football bowl report. So we're not sure exactly what time, though. But check back with us tomorrow. NFL for the Our Football Radio Network preview for Week 16. And we will talk college football bowl action. We have a lot of coverage. And I'll get an opportunity to just throw a whole bunch of stuff at you to get you ready for all the remaining bowl games from now until the playoffs. Robert Gagliardi on Great DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the meeting room on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the NFL Draft.